Hi, everyone. Welcome to class. Can you guys hear me? Just going to try one more time. If you can hear me, please send something in the chat so I can know I can get started. Okay, cool. Thank you. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. Hopefully you can see my slides. If not, put a message in the chat. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being on time. Welcome to session 5 of Creative Writing Fundamentals. You guys are almost at the end. And I can tell from your homework that you guys are making lots of progress. So I really appreciate you guys sticking with it and putting in lots of hard work. So today's agenda, we have a bit of check-ins as usual. We'll do a little bit of reviewing with red flags and green lights, and then I'll give you guys some time to write in class. We'll have a free writing exercise. Then we'll take a look at 2 useful concepts called the emotional roller coasters and the lens technique. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of discussion about the homework and practice. Before we get started, does anybody have questions about the homework from last week? Any of the feedback I gave? Any questions in general? No questions. Okay, cool. So what I want you guys to do today is we're talking about red flags and green lights. So what I want you to do is I want to hear which red flag you find yourself using the most. So which one is the hardest for you to avoid, and maybe why, if you have an idea. If you don't, that's okay, but take a guess maybe. And then I also want to hear what a green light you struggle to use or would like more practice with. So some of you guys are really good at using, I don't know, use a lot of alliteration or onomatopoeia or similes, but maybe there are some other poetic devices or green lights that you're not so good at, like maybe genius verbs or sensory details. Feel free to put in the chat. I think neither of you guys have working mics, but put in the chat which red flag is hard for you to avoid and which green light you struggle to use. So Jack says, red flag he finds himself using is redundancy. Always try to go into detail, but end up using unnecessary. That's a good one. What about a green light? I think something that might help with redundancy is if you feel like this is the case, what helps me sometimes is just to write the most basic paragraph that I can. So I focus on maybe stick to the basics. So I just try to use nouns and verbs. So great subjects, good nouns for subjects, good verbs. And I try to keep out all the other fluff. So keep out adjectives and then add in adjectives sparingly later where you feel like they're needed, and then go back and cut. Jack also says grammar. I'm not sure if that's a red flag or a green light, but I think it's a red flag. Rafi says a green light is not being able to describe something with lots of detail. So describing with detail. And then a red flag is ending is always rushed. That's not a red flag, but it is not one of the ones that we consider a red flag, but I will take it as something that you find yourself using. So I think that's just a matter of getting used to word counts and then being able to proofread when you're done. Good reflection on that. Hopefully you guys have been learning something from the feedback that I'm giving you on the homeworks. So with that, I'm going to let you guys do a little bit of a free writing assessment. So think of one of your favorite book or TV show or movie characters. Write a descriptive scene set in a gas station with this character. And no more than 1 to 2 phrases of dialogue aloud. So I think I will give you guys maybe like 15 minutes to write this. So write this somewhere else, maybe in Word document or in some sort of text editor. Write out your story, send it to me at about 9:20 Eastern, and then I will look at them and take a look at the red flags and green lights that I've seen. Any questions about this? And hey, Gianna, I see you just joined. We are doing a free writing exercise, writing a short little story with one of your favorite book, TV show, or movie characters, and writing a descriptive scene set in a gas station with that character. No more than 1 to 2 phrases of dialogue aloud, and you have about 15 minutes. Don't forget to write it somewhere other than the Zoom chat so it doesn't disappear if you get disconnected. Hey, Lucas, thanks for joining us. Like I mentioned before, we are doing a little bit of a free writing exercise with the topic on the screen, and we are reconvening at 9:20 Eastern. So think of a scene with one of your favorite characters, fictional characters. Write a little scene set in the gas station with that character. No more than 1 to 2 phrases of dialogue allowed. And then write it off to the side, not in Zoom, and then send it to me in the chat when you are done. And then we can take a look at some of them together. let's see. So Gianna asks if there's a sentence restriction to 1 to 2. No, you can write as much as you want. You're only restricted to dialogue. So I don't want you to write an entire story of dialogue. So if you need to use dialogue, just use 1 to 2 phrases. But your story itself should be, a paragraph, a big paragraph, probably. But I just don't want to see a ton of dialogue. And I think the reason for that is because dialogue makes it hard for us to, while it's important in stories, it makes it hard to evaluate for red flags and green lights because that mostly applies to prose. All right, those of you that did not join late, you should be wrapping up. So feel free to put the finishing touches on your paragraph and send me what you have. It's okay if it's not a lot. Awesome. So I've got one submission, so I will put it up. The rest of you keep, please tell me what you have. Awesome, thank you. All right, let's see what we have. So I scanned my surroundings looking for any potential danger. As my eyes flew around the room hastily, everything seemed absolutely fine. The forecourt was processing normally, cars going in and out, doing their business. Then I saw the problem, the amenity store. The number of monsters all piled up in there was quite frightening, at least for the cashier. The look on her face was quite priceless. I guess that's my cue, I think to myself, pulling out my dagger. Ooh, I like this. So a couple things. Let's see. I scanned my surroundings, looking for any potential danger, as my eyes flew around the room hastily. So this is an example, I think, of an adverb that doesn't modify the verb. So I think flew is already a great verb here. And so because flew usually implies speed, I think there's no need to say hastily here. So maybe this is redundant. Everything seemed absolutely fine. I think this is one of those words that doesn't mean much, especially what's the difference between everything seemed fine versus everything seemed absolutely fine. To me, it feels like you don't need it. The forecourt was processing normally, cars going in and out. I would get rid of this and just write cars going in and out doing their business, or cars going in and out maybe like normally or as usual. And I think instead of then I saw a problem, you can just describe the problem itself, right? So I would maybe do a paragraph break here. Then I saw, I don't know, the monsters maybe like piled in the amenity store. And then instead of frightening, I see stuff like this a lot where you're like, where students will be like, something's frightening or something is, later priceless. Try to describe it to me in a way that will frighten me, right? So maybe something scary about the monsters is like they had, I don't know, they dripping blood from their eyes and so like try to describe something in a way that will frighten me instead of telling me that it's frightening, if that makes sense. And same with this. So instead of telling me the cashier or the look on her face is priceless, it doesn't tell me that necessarily what about her face. So maybe I would just describe the cashier's face. So the cashier cowered behind the counter face. I guess that's my cue, I think to myself, pulling out my dagger. But this is a great start to a story. I would love to read the rest. It seems like a great start. Good job. Let's see what everybody else has come up with. Any questions about what I did with that one? Okay, good job. Let's take a look at a different one. So somebody writes, August shrugged whenever mom asked if he'd want anything. August was bombarded. I would maybe change this to he, so you're not repeating the same word. He was bombarded with stares as usual. Some may think he would have gotten used to it by now. I would say you might think he would have gotten used to it by now, but it still picks what it is. This is an example pronoun without an antecedent. I assume this refers to stares. So I would say maybe they still pick at the unhealed scar. Ooh, this is really, how do I put this? This is quite deep. I think I would reword this maybe as that unhealed scar deep down inside. And then I would include the ugly part like maybe before. So a sentence about how he's always feared that he's ugly. And yeah, this is a start. I think some more showing for sensory details will help, right? So the prompt was to write a scene set in a gas station, and there's not a ton of gas station imagery here. So I would say maybe like, how do you, without even saying gas station or gas or car, how can you tell somebody's in a gas station? Maybe it's like the aisles, right? In the last one, we had the cashier, maybe the cashier behind like the plastic screen, or like the ice machines in the back, all these different things that you would think about when you go to a gas station. Good job on this one. Let's see this next one. So with the urgent need for both supplies and information, Cooper would take no time at all in looking over the gas station. He would find its attendants and, in a station of the cross sort of way, illuminate their lives with his tales, each one a narrative of either hope or perseverance. They might just be gas station attendants in the middle of nowhere and in a time when all of humanity was suffering. But for the few moments that Cooper could connect long enough to tell them a story, these attendants were characters worth his time. Okay, I like this a lot. I really like this in a station of a cross sort of way. And I think this would be a great maybe opening paragraph or closing paragraph to sort of like wrap something up. One thing I will say is that this paragraph is sort of high on what I would call the ladder of abstraction. And what I mean by that is all the different nouns you can use sort of fall from very specific to very abstract. And so at the bottom, you have things like very concrete things, all right? So fur, grass, I don't know, crust, right? All these different things. And then up top, you have things that are very abstract, like hope, perseverance, freedom. And I think one of the things that will help you in your writing is to sort of go up and down this ladder of abstraction, right? So make sure this one has a lot of stuff at the top of the ladder of abstraction. So very like big ideas, right? So very like vague or abstract ideas. And I think it's important, especially for creative writing like this, where you want your readers to be able to picture something, to include lots of specific details. So maybe you mentioned that Cooper found the attendants. Well, what is the specific attendant he found? Like pick one time. So this seems like it's describing a trend or a habit, but pick one particular time and describe it, right? What's the tale he's telling? What's special about this particular gas station, and why is that, why are these characters worth does that make sense? Any questions about that one? Cool. Let's do one more. Tony Stark was driving his brand new Lamborghini he got for Christmas until he noticed that she was almost out of gas. He pulled over by a nearby gas station to fill the gas tank up. A guy appeared in front of his window and asked how much gas he wanted. 91 gold was his answer. The guy nodded and took his credit card. Tony waited in the car. Suddenly, there was an exclaim coming from outside his Lambo. Apparently, the guy was looking at his phone and accidentally clicked 89 silver instead of 91 gold. At first, Tony was pissed off and said that he had wasted all his money on this useless gas. But seeing the guy really sorry and asked if he had wanted a refund, Tony calmed down. He gave his answer and drove away. Okay. Let's see. So Tony Stark was driving his brand new Lamborghini he got for Christmas. So I would start this by, let's see, until he noticed that he was almost out of gas. So I think this could be a little more specific, right? So instead of notice that he was almost out of gas, I would say maybe he maybe make it even more specific. So instead of noticing that he was almost out of gas, maybe you looked at the dashboard and saw that the gas indicator was almost at E. Pulls over. I would try to write this all in present tense, right? So pulls over to a nearby gas station to fill up. You don't need to say fill the tank, fill the gas tank up. A guy appeared. Okay, so guy is colloquial. Can we change this to sub description, right? So scruffy man in a neon construction vest maybe appeared in front of his window. So instead of appeared, maybe like, what's a better verb that we can describe the way he got in front of the window? Maybe like sauntered in front of the window. Sauntered to his window. And asks how much gas he wants. And I think you mean what type of gas here. The guy, no, it's Tony waits in the car. We have a small red flag here, right? So an adverb. There was an exclaim. So instead of saying there was an exclaim, why don't I just describe it? So I would say came over looking alarmed and explained that he was looking at his phone and accidentally clicked 89 silver instead of that. At first, Tony was pissed off. So instead of was pissed off, why don't we try to describe what that looks like? So Tony fumed, maybe. Or Tony sighed with exasperation or cursed, right? And then upon seeing the guy very sorry, Tony calmed down. He gave his answer and drove away. Does that make sense? So I was sort of focusing on converting the tenses to present or simple past, and making the sort of language more precise. So instead of telling, we try to show some more, so make it easier for us to see. Any questions about any of these? Gianna asks if Tony ever got the gas or if he drove away with an empty tank. I don't know. Seems like he filled it up with, I mean, based on the reading, it seems like he filled it up with 89 silver, which your car would still run. So that's my guess. Cool. So let's move on to our new concepts for the day. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about emotional roller coasters, right? So this sort of like describes the emotional intensity that happens in a story. And obviously this is something that happens not just in writing, but also in other forms of media. If you think about your favorite movies, even your favorite songs, or you can sort of map out the emotional intensity of the song on a graph, right? So here we have a y-axis, emotional intensity, and x-axis is like the place in the story or the movie for that time. And so obviously no story is the same, right? All stories have a slightly different emotional trajectory. But here are three of the most popular ones that I want to share with you. So the first one is a supernova, right? So it starts with a bang, which is the red line, or it ends with a bang, like the orange line, and the story just has one peak. And so when it's not at the peak, if it's before the peak, it's building up to that energy, to that climax, and if not, it's sort of falling action. Then we have the zigzag, which starts slow, then intensifies, then loses steam at the start of the second half before taking off again. So that's this green line right here. And then there's the twin peaks, which has two climaxes, sort of like a roller coaster. So the question is, why are these important, right? Why do we have emotional roller coaster plots like this? And so they're important because they build up to the climax, like I said, or they build up suspense between major events. And this way you'll catch and hold the reader's attention. I think a lot of you guys could use this in your homework, because what I find is that either something is low energy the entire way through, or some of your homeworks are high intensity the entire way through. And neither of those are what you want, right? You sort of want there always to be some sort of rising or falling action so the reader has something to look forward to. Otherwise, if it's high intensity all the time, the reader will get very tired. And if it's low intensity, the reader will get bored. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, cool. So I think what we're going to do now is take a look at the reading. So I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes to, you should have read this yesterday or the day before. And what I want you to do is maybe take a look and refresh yourself if you haven't read it, and send to me in the chat what you think the emotional roller coaster of the story is. So maybe where do you think, how many peaks do you think there are? Where are the peaks? And how does it add to the overall storytelling of the piece? So I'll put this question in the chat. And then I will show the different graphs. So in the next minute, 2 minutes, take a look, refresh yourself, and let me know how you feel the story, what the emotional roller coaster for the story looks like.
Excuse me?
Yep.
Yeah, wait, where do we do it on? In the chat?
Yes, just send me your answer in the chat.
No, good.
Um, the story you are describing is the one from the homework. So Broken by Iris Wu. It's been a few minutes, so feel free to send your thoughts in the chat about how you feel the emotional roller coaster story is. Don't forget to put in the chat when you have an answer.
Wait, can you put on the roller coaster thing? I mean, like the.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so somebody has written in. And let me read what they've said. So I think this is a zigzag emotional roller coaster. So it starts slow, then intensifies, then loses steam at the start of the second half before promptly taking off again. Because the story starts off strong with hair brushing that immediately leads to the past. Ultimately leads to a past. I agree. I think it starts off right here, maybe not so. And then, but pretty much at the end of this first paragraph, we have something happening, right? We have some sort of conflict, and this I feel like is already very high intensity. There's yelling, there's fighting, something's broken, there's phones being slammed. Her dad calls, so it starts off pretty strong. I agree. Then it starts to go down for a little bit, right? So there's memories, and so it sort of cools down after this crazy start. And then when we finally meet our dad and the door slams for the last time, it skyrockets. So yeah, I believe that somewhere like this, it goes to, this is maybe the bottom. It goes up when she sees her dad, and then the conversation gets worse and worse, right? And so it continues to become more and more emotionally intense. And then finally, I think right here maybe is like the peak of the entire story, where it's like, this is what her dad has come to. And then let's see. I think this adds to the overall storytelling by using the roller coaster to add information to the story and giving lots of details when it's needed. Agreed. I also think it sort of manages to keep us hooked without getting too overwhelming, like I said, right? So it draws you in with the conflict, and then gives you more information at the bottom of the falling action, and then starts to rise again, which makes us look forward to it. Somebody else also says zigzag. It starts with chaos, and then it's sad, and then it goes up again. I agree. So good job, guys, analyzing the emotional roller coaster of this one. I think you guys did a great job. I would say it's either Zigzag or Twin Peaks, but pretty much there's something at the start, goes back up. I think actually Zigzag is better because it doesn't really ever go down at the end. So you guys are spot on with that. So the last thing we want to talk about today is the lens technique. And so I think this can help some of you guys who make a lot of great observations, but don't know how to organize them. And so, whoops. The lens technique is sort of like pretending like you're holding a camera and panning or zooming from one part of the photo or picture to another. And so this is a great tool for your picture paragraphs because what you can do is you can start by describing things that are on the left and then start to move to describe things in the middle of the picture and then to the right. You can also zoom from multiple directions. So maybe you can zoom from far to close. You can zoom from pan from top right to bottom left and combine these different directions. And I also have a note here that you can apply this technique with visual details as well as with sonic or tactile sensory details, right? So you can describe, you know, what you see in a certain part of the photo and then describe what's in the middle and then what's in the bottom right. But you can also talk about like what you hear. So maybe you hear something from far away and then you hear different things when you get closer to the scene, right? So this is a really helpful way to think about organizing your piece in a logical way because our brains sort of work like this. And this is how we sort of absorb real life, right? So let's try this a little bit with the last 5 to 10 minutes of class. So I want you to apply the lens technique to your previous homework assignment. So some of you guys wrote really great paragraphs. I think the most helpful way to do this is to not think about what you wrote previously and just try to apply the lens technique. And so what I want you to do is write a couple sentences. Think about one of the particular lens techniques. So maybe either pan or zoom or both. And then whether you're doing visual, other sensory details. And then write a few sentences about this. So for example, if you want to do pan, maybe you start with, if you want to do pan from bottom up, maybe you'll start by describing the grass, then you'll start by describing the shoes and the socks and their tights and their jersey, and then finally up to the helmet, the arms, and the gloves, right? Or you could start with maybe zooming sonically. So maybe you talk about the sound outside the stadium, and then you talk about the sound staying inside the seat, and then you talk about the sound from the sidelines, and then the sound on the actual field. There's all sorts of different ways you can do this. So try out one of them. Sure, I can pull it up again. And when you're done, send me what you have in the chat. And just be a couple of sentences because I know you didn't have too much time. Let's wrap up now. Send in what you have, your lens technique paragraphs. Okay, let's see what we got. So the big, strong football player caught the ball in the air while he jumped. Some of the red players looked helpless in the left of the picture. There was still a lot of tackling on the right side of the picture, and the white lines and words were drawn perfectly on the turf field. The crowd was roaring. Okay, I can see that maybe you're trying the pan technique. I think part of the technique is not being so explicit about it, maybe. And so instead of like saying there's stuff happening in the left of the picture and in the right of the picture, you don't really say that. You instead turn these into observations. So right, so the Texans look on helplessly at the outstretched arms of the receiver in the air. And then I would describe, I don't know, number 87 runs into, I don't know, another player, but it's too late. And then describe how this player falls down onto the grass and the crowd roars. Does that make sense more? So like instead of saying this is on the left side of the picture, this is on the right side of the picture, just describe what's happening there, describe what's happening in the middle, and describe what's happening on the right. Instead of, I think here you go from describing what's happening in the middle to describing what's happening on the left and the right, but sort of like having a more continuous sweeping motion like a camera in a movie. Any questions about that? Cool. So your homework for, I think this is your last homework, is to read Sardines by Andy Shung. So we will discuss that in next class, and make sure you have read it before we start. And then to write 200 to 250 words describing the story based on this photo in as much detail as possible. And use one of the emotional roller coaster structures in your piece, and make sure you write it above or beneath your response. Any questions about this? If not, I will see you on Sunday for the last class.